So Jeff Sessions is out as Attorney General. He delivered his resignation letter today at the request of the president. Some might call that fired. Sessions' Chief of Staff, Matthew Whittaker, will take over as interim, and among his responsibilities will be supervising the Mueller probe. But that's just some of the latest in what has been a wild post-election news day. Things did start out, as you might expect, with Donald Trump celebrating what he declared to be a GOP victory.
It was a big day yesterday, an incredible day. And last night, the Republican Party defied history to expand our Senate majority while significantly beating expectations in the House.
It's worth noting that Democrats are claiming victory, too, having taken control of the House, as you just heard. But for Trump, this one was personal.
I think people like me. I think people like the job I'm doing, frankly. I think I am a great moral leader, and I love our country.
Now, during today's press conference, Trump also proceeded to read the names of Republicans who distanced themselves from him and lost, and went back and forth between embracing unity with the Democrats and then threatening them. One group he was pretty consistent with, though, the media.
I'm not concerned about anything with the Russian investigation because it's a hoax. That's enough. Put down the mic. CNN should be ashamed of itself having you working for them. You are a rude, terrible person.
In Jim's defense, I've traveled with him and watched him. He's a diligent reporter who busts his butt.
Well, I'm not
like
a big
the rest
fan
of
of yours either, so
I understand.
To be honest. That's such a racist question. See, when you talk about division, it's people like this that cause division, great division.
I'm joined now by a pair about to enter that world full-time. They're two of the historic 30-plus women who just won seats in the U.S. House. Congresswoman-elect Lori Trahan, she's a Democrat who represents Massachusetts' 3rd District. It's great to meet you, Congresswoman. Thanks for being here. And Congresswoman-elect, she's been here before, Ayanna Pressley, a Democrat who won the state's 7th District, also happens to be the first woman of color to represent Massachusetts in Congress. Congratulations to you, too.
Jim.
It's great to see you. I know you were favored, but what did it feel like at the second last night that you knew you'd won this thing? What was the feeling?
Well, I was elated. It was a long journey to get there to last night. You know, we went through a tough primary, but a great one, one that made me a better candidate as a result. But then we went to a recount. And so, yeah, last night was that moment that I made sure that I savored for a second.
So you didn't have a final, but you had a primary. And after the primary, you had no opponent. Yet I get your schedule every single morning in my email, and you're working like you're running against the 10 people she was competing.
Absolutely.
What was that about?
Because I think, given the crossroads this country is at, this moment is much bigger than any one election cycle or any one candidate. I'm so proud of the electorate that we expanded and the many new voices that we engaged. 54% of the electorate in our primary, that was the first time they voted in a primary. And in the Latino community alone, the vote grew 71% from 2014 to 2018. And amongst college voters, BU Students Village, the vote grew by 400%. So this is about the strength of our democracy.
So what was your reaction to the split decision last night? I mean, the House obviously goes to the Democrats, and the Republicans strengthen their hand in the Senate, which is a pretty important thing. We'll get to that in a second.
I think we had anticipated that. I mean, you know, certainly there was a lot of focus on some of the more high-profile governorships, but we took some corner offices that we hadn't anticipated. We're walking into a House that is in the Democratic majority. And moreover, this is the most inclusive and representative freshman class in the history of Congress. So much to celebrate.
But the other half that a lot of Democrats didn't want to talk about last night was there are more Republicans in the Senate. There's a net increase of 3 pro-life Republicans in the Senate. My assumption is there's no more worrying about Lisa Murkowski or Susan Collins standing up against horrible court nominees. They've got the votes to confirm anybody that Donald Trump proposes. Is that not worrisome and then some?
Yeah, I mean, I think like Ayanna said, I do think our expectations were managed a little bit going into last night around the Senate. But watching us win back the House was something that was really important, I'm sure, to both of us, because everything we talked about on the campaign hinged on whether we were going to make progress on those issues.
You may have heard there are a record number of women. I bet you've heard that once or twice. Well, how is that? How is Congress going to be different? How am I, as a constituent, going to see a different Congress because there are a record number of women?
I've often said, and it's because of my experience in the private sector, working, in boardrooms that didn't have enough women, and then boardrooms that did. Better decisions are made when more women are at the table. And we saw more women get elected. We saw many, many more women run, and I think that's a great start. We have to build upon that. Last night I had the opportunity to really reflect. Congresswoman Tsongas had introduced me.
Your predecessor,
yeah. Yeah, and we forget, like, when she ran 11 years ago, she wasn't running with 237 women nationwide alongside her. And, she became the first woman in 25 years to represent Massachusetts down in Washington. And now look, we've got 4 women out of 12.
Do you want a quiz for a second? How many women in the history of Massachusetts had ever represented us in Congress before Yamiche Alcindor was elected? Ever. In the couple of hundred years.
Goodness. Don't do that to
3 ever.
I was going to say 3.
Ever. I mean, it's unbelievable.
Oh, man.
You tweeted something this morning. It's not only that we have record numbers of women, we have record numbers of women of color, too. Here's your tweet from this morning, Congresswoman. When it comes to women of color candidates, folks don't just talk about a glass ceiling, what they describe as a concrete one. We broke that concrete wide open. How's that going to manifest itself in the lives of those of us who are not in Congress in the next 2 years?
Sure. I mean, I think to the Congresswoman's point, I think that we're all better served by a more inclusive and representative government. It means that the issues that are spotlighted and lifted up are more robust and fully informed. Yamiche Alcindor proved that. I don't think she campaigned on a platform of military sexual assault. But when she got to Congress, because she actively listened, because the issue deeply resonated with her, it became a hallmark of her congressional tenure. So I think ultimately...
Working with the Republicans, by the way, I should say, too.
Yeah, absolutely. And so but I do want to say this, Jim. I do take issue with this narrative that there is, first it was a blue wave and then a woman's wave. And, if there is a wave, it's not one we're riding. It's one we created. I think if people either characterize this as a fluke and an anomaly or as a fad and a trend, both give short shrift to the leadership decisions that we made, like rejecting corporate PAC money, building broad and diverse grassroots coalitions. We ran our campaigns differently.
So speaking of leadership, I asked you once at a debate, I think you were sitting there, you're going to vote for Nancy Pelosi. You said it was premature. I've read you say, I'm not going to get into that, I'm paraphrasing, until after the election. The election's over. Is Nancy Pelosi going to get your vote?
It's too soon to tell. I mean, one thing
Did she call you after you won?
Yeah, she called.
Did she ask for your vote?
No.
She did.
And you know that she came up to the district.
I do know that, yes.
She didn't ask me then either. Look, I really admire the fact that she was heads down, just like getting Democrats elected, and that's what her focus was. And she told me to do the same thing. She said, you have a tough race, focused on getting yourself elected. Over the next couple of weeks, there are going to be leadership conversations. And, Ayanna and I are going to be busy, building our office and, attracting good people to come work with us in Washington and our districts. And, I look forward to seeing who the candidates are, seeing how they plan on structuring the leadership, and I'll make my decision.
So she hasn't guaranteed your vote, but you're not saying you couldn't vote for somebody else either, are you? Is that where you are?
Jim, I think for me, the cart before the horse was not that we were still in the election. The cart before the horse is that I want us to have a conversation as a party about the vision and the direction of this party. And then I can think about who should be leading it. We have takeaways from the 2018 midterms. The fact that we are entering into a majority has everything to do with the sort of candidates that we put forward and the type of campaigns that they ran, the messages that they ran on. And I want to make sure that those things are going to be put into practice and considered and directly informing and shaping the direction and the future vision of this party.
Do you know who said he was supporting Nancy Pelosi as Speaker? Did you hear today? The President of the United States said if she needs a few votes, he can get them for
it's very magnanimous.
Speaking of the President of the United States, he said bipartisan, 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 with one huge caveat today at that endless press conference. Here's Donald Trump.
If the Democrats want to, we can do a tremendous amount of great legislation.
If they start investigating you, that you can play that game and investigate them.
Better than them.
Can you compartmentalize that and still continue to work with them for the benefit of the rest of the country?
No.
Or are all bets off?
No. If they do that, then it's just all it is a warlike posture.
Well, there is going to be oversight. Democratic leaders have said already there will be accountability here, so he seems to be saying, I guess there's no deal. Is this just a holding action for 2 years in the House, or can Democrats work with Donald Trump?
I think Democrats and Republicans in the Congress can work together to pass,
Is that a pipe dream? I mean, look at this last couple of years. Dysfunction, partisan sickness. Why is it going to change?
Well, one, I think there's a correlation between electing, many new people who have never run for office before, many new women going down. When you have a critical mass of new people going to Washington at the same time, I think you have an opportunity to break that gridlock and business as usual.
Do you too?
I do. I think I won't, deny that we're incredibly polarized right now. By the way, those flames have been fanned by the current occupant of the White House. It's why we're so polarized. We're polarized by hate. We're not polarized because there aren't shared values and common interests. We all want a greater investment in infrastructure. There's even bipartisan interest in criminal justice reform. So we all want accessible, affordable, quality child care, schools that are highly performing. So I think that there's more that binds and bounds us, but we're incredibly polarized. That has everything to do with the current occupant of the White House.
Before you go, speaking for the current occupant of the White House, we learned today when this Whittaker, the chief of staff to Jeff Sessions, will be the interim person. We also learned that no longer will Rod Rosenstein be in charge of the Mueller investigation, and that was because Sessions had recused himself, but that this Whittaker guy will be. Does that concern you?
It's not surprising. I bid, a fond farewell to Jeff Sessions and his bigoted rhetoric and policies and actions as well. But given the track record of this administration, I don't have any more confidence about who will follow him. It's really incumbent upon us in Congress to ensure that this investigation is independent and that we keep the special counsel.
Rod Rosenstein has made sure that Mueller has maintained independence. Are you nervous about Whittaker doing the same?
Yeah, I think we're nervous. The timing of this is incredibly, suspicious, and I think we all have questions around it. I think exactly what Ayanna said. I mean, the most important thing is that we keep the special counsel in place. We have to see, where the evidence leads.
Good luck to both of you. It's really
Thank
exciting.
you.
Ayanna Pressley, really a pleasure. Good
Have us
luck
back
to you.
on when we know our committee assignments.
Well, what are your committee
We
assignments?
don't know yet.
Okay, fine. Lori Trahan, it's great
you.
to see you.
Thanks so much.
Congratulations. Really
Appreciate it.
appreciate it.
Thank you, Jim.
Two new women congresspeople from Massachusetts.